Hey everyone, it's Byron here again to testify for Jesus Christ. Today I'm going to just make a point of some things I've heard people teaching about the Bible. And the point I want to make is that you need to read it yourself. You need to know what it says. It's not going to happen in one reading. It didn't for me, and I don't know everything yet anyway. But what's going to need to take place is a total read of the Bible, or reread, and just meditate on the scriptures, absorb the scriptures, and know what the scriptures say. In this day and age that we live in, we have had so many people mislead the flock. The Christians are scattered, and I'm not talking about those that call themselves Christians. I'm talking about Christians are scattered. They have been scattered by false teachers, scattered by liars, etc., etc. And let me give you some examples of why you should read the Bible for yourself. Here's the point. In one example, I heard some people online talking about. The question was asked, who is the man child spoken of in Revelation 12? And I'm going to read two verses from Revelation 12 that let you know a description of things about the man child. In Revelation 12, verse 5, it says, "And she brought forth a man child." And please just read all of Revelation, read all of Revelation 12 at least, so you know what it's talking about. But I'm just getting right to the point. And she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And then in verse 13, "And when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth," the dragon being cast into the earth himself, "he persecuted the woman which had brought forth the man child." So we have the clue of who the man child is by the fact that he is supposed to rule the nations with a rod of iron, and he was caught up together to be with God and to the throne of God. That's Jesus Christ, period. There's no other way around it. Well, the question was asked. Now, listen, these are Bible study people that run a Bible college. The eldest is about 80 years old. People that's been reading the Bible their whole life. They were asked a question, and their response to the question of who is the man child talking about in Revelation chapter 12, their response was, "Oh, well, it's the 144,000 who will be sealed with the seal of God" in Revelation. You can find that. I'll put it on the screen where you can find that in Revelation. Folks, that's not even close. That's not even in the same ballpark. That's not the same city. They're playing baseball. Let's say they're playing baseball in Baton Rouge, and somebody drove up to New Jersey and said, "Where's the game?" That's how far off that is. Now, here's the second point I want to make. Now, this is not splitting hairs if it comes down to reading the Bible. If you read the Bible and you believe what the Bible's telling you, you'll understand that I'm not splitting hairs here. I'm telling you, if you make the assumption on the 144,000, it will lead to another error. It's like a compass setting. If you get that compass set, if you need to go east, and east is a 90-degree azimuth, if you set that azimuth for 95 degrees, you're not going east. You're going a little bit, maybe east, southeast. And then going east, southeast, if you make another error based on that first error, you can be going eventually south, and you're not even going east. And that's the same way you can do it with doctrine. You can start off with a little error, and that little error, the little leaven, brings to more error, and pretty soon you got somebody talking about something that ain't. It's hard to even conceive how they begin talking about it. The second point that I want to make is it was talking about Abraham believed God, and it was accounted him from righteousness. And the question came up, what did Abraham exactly believe that was accounted to him for righteousness? Now, the scriptures in the Old Testament, it says definitely Abraham believed in the Lord. Let's read that part right there so we'll know. "And behold, the word of the Lord came," this is Genesis 15, verse 4. "And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying," him being Abraham, "This shall not be thine heir." Now, again, Genesis 15 is bigger than these verses I'm reading. It's there. If you go to junipertreeandbeyond.com, click on Audio Bible, go to Genesis and scroll down to 15. You'll get the text and the words. Also, I think if you go to putthelightin.com by Gary Gray, he's got it set up the same way where you can listen to it and see the words at the same time. That's helpful for. I'm not that good of a reader, but I do better listening than I do trying to read it. I have to think so hard to read, I can't comprehend as much as if I'm listening. So I like to listen to it, and that's why I've done it that way. Anyway, Genesis 15, verse 4. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir. And that's referring to a guy who was raised up in Abraham's house. He was a stranger, a foreigner, not of Abraham. But he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he, that is Abraham, believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. So right there where it's talking about what happened on the time that Abraham believed in the Lord, it tells us exactly what happened. It tells us that Abraham believed that the Lord, what the Lord said. He believed the Lord was able to bring it forth to be. He tells us that straightforward what happened in that verse. Now, listening to the program today, someone asked the question, well, what was it exactly that Abraham believed? Their answer was they believed in the promise of the coming Messiah. Now, I have absolutely no doubt that Abraham believed that. I really do. In fact, if you go to John chapter 8, verse 56, and I may read all the way to 58. This is Jesus speaking. It says, Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. But there's no tie. We're just going to leave it with verse 56. But there's no tie between verse 56 and that moment that Abraham believed in the Lord. If you're going to tie it to that, you could also tie it to the time that Abraham was on Mount Moriah when he was going to sacrifice Isaac, and there was a lamb caught in the thicket, and a ram, I believe, and he used that in substitute for Isaac on the altar. You could also believe that's when Abraham saw the day, because that definitively shows us there's a substitute. There is Jesus Christ substituted for us. And then Paul just makes mentions of it in Romans chapter 4, verse 2. He says, For if Abraham were justified by works, he hath whereof to glory, but not before God. Meaning, if Abraham had done something that he was counted righteous for, he could glory in that, but not in front of God. For what saith the Scriptures? Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness. So the whole point that I'm making is that if you are listening to somebody teach the Bible, in this day and age, or if in previous times, but you're not reading the Bible and studying the Bible yourself, you are going to fall into situations to where you're going to have to be at the mercy of their teaching. And if you're at the mercy of their teaching and they're wrong, possibly because their dad was wrong and possibly because their granddad was wrong, you're going to be wrong. And we don't want to have this stuff all misconstrued. Jesus said, Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. When the New Testament church began, man, there began to be attacks on the truth all throughout. You can see where Paul, at one point in time, Paul said, all the churches of Asia have left me. Meaning they've turned their back on the truth of the one Paul who was there to actually establish those churches. So I'm just cautioning you, is that if you're going to believe what somebody's saying, believe it if you know you've read it and agree with it. But don't believe it if you haven't read it and verified it. Just note it down and go and research it. If it says what they're saying, great. But if it doesn't say what they're saying, leave it open. Don't draw your own conclusion just to follow them. Just do your own research. Be a Berean. If you look that word up in a search, be a Berean. They searched the scriptures. Every time they heard something, they would search the scriptures and see if it was so. That's how they did, and that's what I'm just encouraging people to do. So that is a video there just to try to caution people about just believing too much without verification from scriptures. Thank you.